Good morning, everyone. My name's Mike Richardson, and I'm pleased to be here today. I work for Ngwala Wollongong Cooperative in Melbourne, and what we are today is basically a statewide service. And as you can see up there, some of the things that we look after, in particular, AOD problems. So we have several outreach workers that cover all sorts of metro areas, as well as the 3 rehabs that we currently have throughout the state. We're also responsible for a housing service, which is also a statewide coordinated service. We have recently put on family violence workers, which, as you've heard through the conference, has been mentioned time and time again, the importance of having family violence workers. We offer financial advice, right down to the very basics of just paying a gas bill and all those sorts of things for our clients. And we provide mentoring, which has come out of a lot of people under particular community and justice orders not turning up for appointments and things like that, and therefore getting into a lot of trouble. So we have actually now been funded to provide mentors to improve that situation, and it has improved it remarkably. As well as that, we have youth justice workers, which service the metro areas, very important. And up until we lost the funding through Mr Tony Abbott, we actually had the Talkeya statewide network, which is the first time that we managed to get over 100 AOD Koori workers through the state together and actually become a body and an agent for change. It's been a great organisation, and it'll be sadly missed. And finally, we have what we call a Sober Up Centre, which allows that police can actually call us anytime 24/7 if they have somebody in custody for drunkenness and so on, and we will actually go out and pick them up, and we have a safe house for them to detox. So that's pretty much where we are today. We're an organisation of over 60 people. But where did it actually start? If I can find the right button. The basic way that it started, I'll just simply read it from our official history, is that the Ngwala's development emerged as a part of the movement of Melbourne-based Aboriginal services founders in the 70s. The push for access by Aboriginal people to basic social entitlements led to the creation of a number of Indigenous cooperatives and organisations. In Melbourne, most of these services focused on specific areas, Indigenous needs such as health, housing, education, justice, etc. In contrast, rural-based cooperatives, through necessity, housed a broader mix of programs. So Ngwala's contribution to the push was to focus on the recovery and support needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people affected by alcohol and, to a lesser extent, drug abuse. At that time, very few Aboriginal people accessed mainstream AOD services, and other emerging Aboriginal organisations were focusing their attention on other social issues. The collective impact of these factors meant that Aboriginal people with chronic AOD issues were isolated from their community, mainstream AOD services and community organisations. So Ngwala's founders were a group of voluntary community members, many of whom were just recovering alcoholics that were achieving sobriety through the support of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the founders shared a deep concern for the safety, health and welfare of substance-affected Aboriginal people and their families, especially those that were sleeping rough in the parks and gardens of St Kilda. This target group became affectionately known as the Parkies. In addition to their substance abuse, the Parkies shared a mixture of social and health issues, including homelessness, geographic and community isolation, poor health and unemployment. In the years prior to the incorporation in 1977, Ngwala was a small group of unfunded volunteers that collected people from the parks and provided them with shelter and support. At this time, the group was renting a property in Burnley. As you can see, several addresses there. Until in 1975, the founders received funding to establish Galiamble Men's Recovery Centre in Mitchell Street, St Kilda. In 1984 there was funding received and we began the first women's house in St Kilda, which was Wingeralupna. And in 1987 we then received further funding to set up a program, the Percy Green program it was called, up in Shepparton on a 65-acre farm. So that became the beginning of Ngwala Wollongong.
Okay, just before I start, I'm Gillie and I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land that we're on at the moment and pay my respects to ancestors past and present. I'm a far north Queensland man, but I've been living in Melbourne for a number of years. When I first worked with Galiamble, I had visited Galiamble a few times before. Then when I first went there, one of the things I noticed is when you went into the rooms, people were still drunk. This was a rehab, so people were still drunk in the rooms. When I go to wake people up in the mornings, they'd have a stubby beside their bed. They didn't want to get up because they were hungover. People had been out the night before, so they'd only just gotten back from a nightclub. So this is what we had to face when we first came into the centre. And when Ngwala asked if I'd come in and work with them, this was already in my head because I paid visits to the rehab and I was thinking, I don't want to start here, you know. But when I got in there, you know, they said they're wanting to change the place. And, you know, if it's something for my people, you know, even just taking a pay cut or something like that, if it's helping my people, you know, then that's something that, you know, we should be doing and looking to the future of our people. So, you know, going in there and starting to work with the people that were already in there, we couldn't just kick them straight out on the street. We had to work with the people that were in there at that time and gradually work through and see, you know, who was serious about the program. Daily, we had police there. When we set up our, with the manager that was there at the time on his first day there, when he started, he was held up in the office with a knife to his throat. So, you know, by two of the clients. So this was what we were coming into at that time. We're on, the police were there constantly daily, as I said. We usually only had one staff member on duty at the time. There were no therapeutic programs, so there were no programs at all. So even just trying to get people to wake up in the morning to come downstairs to go into what we call a tuning group to just get you started on the day was almost impossible. You might get 2 or 3 come down, then you'll get others come down at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, coming down just for lunch. So, you know, so there was a lot of work that was there. The clients themselves, they had no worker, so they had no one doing a treatment plan for them. So even to bring a treatment plan in for them and to explain to them what a treatment plan was all new to the clients because they had never heard of this before. The rehab was just used like a hostel. So, and at different times we'd have people coming through as well because we were also partly funded by Aboriginal hostels. Even though it was only a small part of the funding, in the Aboriginal hostels website, we're still listed under in their website as a hostel. So people would come through and expect, you know, or wanting a bed for that night, you know, and they're coming in from the country areas. And sometimes that was a little bit hard trying to say we're not a hostel anymore, that we are now rehab. And with people travelling long distances, you know, we had to try to work out how do we work with the community as well, you know, and work with those people. We had a number of clients who were on bail. We had people using the rehab as a hiding place because they had warrants out for them as well. So, you know, a lot of them had no one working with them with their legal issues either. With Ngwala, they finally gained funding for a clinical services unit. And with that clinical services unit, this is where Mike and I first came on, where there are only two left out of the original lot who came in to start working with the clients and staff at Galiamble. With the staff that came in, Ngwala wanted staff that had skills and were able to, there were staff there who'd worked in rehabs before, so having this experience and bringing that experience into the rehab and helping it set up right from scratch and start from the bottom and work through step by step. So we had to do this right from the bottom. There were clients in there, when they came to the rehab, they had wanted to do a rehab. They didn't know that it was going to be like a rooming house or a boarding house. So out of the people that we already had in there, we had clients who were really wanting to get, you know, they were committed to having a rehab done. So they were sort of excited, you know, with us moving in and starting this work. So it's with those ones we started to focus on and work with those. We also worked with the ones who were using it as a boarding house, but we couldn't just kick them out onto the streets, you know, and just push them out, because if you look at Melbourne through the winter seasons, it's really cold. So, you know, they're human as well, so, and it's not their fault that they came in and that's how the service was set up at the beginning. So, you know, we need to make sure that when they do leave, that they go to some place safe. But those clients who are committed, we start to work and really do some case management work with them. There was community pressure. The community had seen how Galiamble had gone down and they wanted it picked up because it ended up becoming a laughing stock in the community because of the police presence, because of people fighting. At different times we had, because if where Galiamble's situated, Galiamble is right in the red light district of St Kilda. So we've got drugs and everything right at the front door. We've got street workers just on the corner. At different times we had people bringing the street workers in to use our rooms, you know, and some of the clients were acting as pimps for those street workers. So, you know, we had to stop all that as well. So, and the community was seeing that. And for us, you know, as an Aboriginal organisation, that's really shameful, you know, for the community to look at us and think that's what's going on in our service. So we had to change all this around. So with that, with those committed clients, we had no files whatsoever to go by in our cabinets. So we had to start from scratch with the clients and work with the clients and start doing files up with the clients, getting information from those clients and starting to put in some work with them.
So it was about this time that we began to put actual programs into the house, and therapeutic programs. And some of them we started with were the basic relapse prevention type groups, self-esteem. Steps groups were brought in as well. And we also engaged with the local TAFE at Swinburne and got the guys into computer courses and so on there. As well as that, there were cultural programs were brought in regularly as well. And it was about this time that we finally brought in a full assessment. So we actually reviewed the one that we had, which was very much just an old scrappy document. And the way it used to work was that a worker somewhere in the state would have someone who needed to get into rehab. They'd sort of generally half fill it out, just shoot it down to us, ring up the next day and say, did you get it? Yeah. And they'd just say, well, I'm going to pack him up today and bring him down, put him in the house. There was no mention of detox or anything like that. So we had... Beg pardon?
Number of beds.
At Galiamble, there's 16. 16, yeah. So often we'd have people coming into the house who were actually detoxing, in the first week with us, and that can cause serious complications as well. So by actually reviewing all the literature and actually setting out our own assessment, we then got that around the network around the state, and the hard part was then to educate the 100 workers around the state as to the requirements we needed. And we wouldn't accept people with just half an assessment. We wanted all the various sections filled out. We wanted to know who the person was, what their issues were, and how we were to help them. We'd also place a lot of emphasis on the individual in the town, knowing the person and the family. So it was very important that we got as much information about the person and the community they lived in. So lots of things began to sort of arc up a bit to make it look more and more like a rehab service. We'd had cases where people, solicitors around Melbourne and the country, would just think that they could march a Koori into court and just without even telling us, get them bailed to Galiamble. And then we'd get a phone call saying, we've got Freddie down here, he's booked to come into Galiamble. We don't know Freddie from anyone. That's the way it used to be, so we had to stop all that sort of behaviour as well. Counselling for the men was introduced about the same time on a weekly basis, and of course what that often does is it highlights other issues that they've often left off the actual assessment. So we began to find out more and more about individuals, and finding that they were often more and more complex than what they originally told us they were. And we began to track the clients. Previously they used to come and go at any time. When I first came there, I used to come down and look at the board. There was simply a board of names. There might be eight or nine names there, and I go through the house and count them up, and there might be 4. And the other 5 who are missing are all on bail. They're bailed to reside at Galiamble, and when you dig in, you find that someone's gone back to Swan Hill, someone's back in Warrnambool, and the next minute you've got police knocking on your door saying, what's he doing in town? We've just arrested him for burglars. So all these things, is no wonder, like Gillie said earlier, we knew the local police by first name. Not surprising. We also started to bring in the fact that all clients had to be at least 7 days detoxed or supply supervised urine screen results, 2 of those over a 3-day period, in order to get in. Didn't go down well with a lot of communities for some time, but bit by bit it's become the norm, and around the state they all accept that if they've got a client, they need to go to detox, or they need to actually provide us with proof. We don't take anyone's word that they haven't used for a week or 2 or 3, whatever it is. We say you have to prove it, and that's worked remarkably well. And about this time is when we engaged in a lot more networking with other services. I won't go into great detail, but Access Health, which is part of the Salvation Army, provided the medical services for our men and also our women at Windsor-Ulupna, who are not far away. And we've had some wonderful doctors there who know a lot about addiction and have worked with all our clients. They actually look after our clients from the day they walk in right through. And we've had people turn up, and when that's been identified by the doctors they've had a serious issue, they've actually managed to get them into St Vincent's or the Alfred to have whatever procedure needs to be done. The local community health service, many detoxes that we engaged with, the Alfred Hospital for mental health and the CAT team, very important for us, and also the local Jewish community, which sounds surprising in some ways, but they helped us a lot with funding and computers into the houses, things like that. Simple things like food and also clothing for the men. So these are just some of the changes that were happening in about 2008. Happens to me again. Sorry about that. I've already covered that with the local GP services for all clients, which was very important. But as well as that, through the local community health service at Inner South, we gained free access for dental services for all our clients, and that was a a wonderful thing to watch the people come in with one or two teeth missing or lots of holes in their teeth and all the rest of it, and over a period of 3 or 4 months with us to actually see all those dental issues, you know, taken care of. To ensure that the house was running well, we did weekly urine screens, but we also carried out random ones, and particularly at times when they'd take weekend leave and come back, there was always screening done. What this obviously did was that it sent the message through the whole house that we're feeding him, that if you're not feeding him, you'll be found out and you'll be discharged. We finally, I can remember the actual person who was the last of the old using clients who actually was finally waved down the road. He was no longer actually a client, he was actually the cook there. But yeah, long story about him, but basically he'd been getting away with it for a long time. It took us quite a while to be able to prove it and to move him out. And he became really the end of the era of people still using in the house. And the final thing is, as I mentioned previously, was the statewide. We did a lot of work of trying to get round the state to all the Koori workers and to educate them on how our assessment form works, what information we need, these are the ways we can help you, and so on. So to build that up has been a pleasure to see that change over the years now to where I can say that I have a lot of confidence in the Koori workers around the state. You know, I really do, and I trust what they tell me. But that took a lot of work and a lot of time to actually get everyone on the same page. But it's very important. Thank you.
Okay. I just have to say, Mike, when he's talking about Koori, he's talking about Aboriginal people in Victoria. He needs to remember we're in Queensland and we're Murray's up here. So just educate him a little bit there. So when we're looking at the clients, you know, if you're looking at things, because we start to get the clients involved in community work, working with the community, and a big thing that we started pushing was for them to get involved in NAIDOC. And with the NAIDOC, what it did, we had clients starting to, they'd have a luncheon on for the elders in Thornbury. So we'd take the clients to Thornbury to serve at an elders luncheon through NAIDOC week. This was in a way advertising to the community, you know, this is what our clients are doing. It also helped the clients help build their self-esteem because they took pride in, you know, who they were and what they were achieving in their life. So this helped to build them up. We also had them, those who wanted to, were able, we'd book through St Kilda Council, we'd book the rooms to have art exhibitions for the clients through NAIDOC week. So clients were able to sell their paintings and that at this centre. And that's a really big thing. A lot of people go through that time. So, you know, it shows clients, you know, that some of them didn't even know they had skills to paint, or they didn't even know that painting was a therapy also, and helps to clear their mind, you know, of issues that they're going through. So, you know, for them to start painting and start to use their skills, you know, it again helps build them up and let them see themselves in a different light. We took also clients, they were going on cultural camps. So going on cultural camps, they would have Aboriginal facilitators. So the Aboriginal facilitators, you know, would work with them and get them, you know, and they were able to relate with the facilitators there. And the facilitators normally knew the families of a number of our clients as well. So, you know, they could work in different areas that we couldn't. We also linked people through back who were part of the stolen generation, helped to get them on the road back to connecting with their family again and also to their country. So we also had cultural programs now running in-house where people, facilitators would come in, Indigenous facilitators would come in and work with our clients. So, a little bit late. She said only 3 minutes left.
Only got 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Some of the changes in 2009 and 10, I'll leave the first one aside, but it was for the first time we were able to actually put in place minimum requirements for the work for support workers. So they all had to be able to have done Certificate 4 in drug and alcohol, or at least be in there and doing it, and also their first aid and obviously a driver's licence. So that became a real step up from the very early days. It could be someone who was just simply in the house for a couple of months and left, could come back and was just given a job. They had no experience whatsoever. We also began to get more workers for the houses, which was very important to spread the load, because there's no such thing as a simple old-fashioned drunk these days. Everyone that comes in, I would say without exception, is complex in some way, so requires a lot of support. We also standardised all the client files, so it's very much a Commonwealth Bank approach, where we spent a lot of time and effort in reviewing what we wanted to go into case files and plans and all the rest of it, and eventually got to a point where it doesn't matter which rehab you go into, it's the same process. Also, we became much stricter on ensuring that all clients had their ITPs done, and that exit plans were also put in place, and particularly important to we might have someone come from Warrnambool, 16 weeks later they return to Warrnambool. We want to be able to give them a handover back to Warrnambool for any help they need. Also, with some extra funding and so on, we've got new computers and vehicles added and all sorts of things which make life a lot better. So that's.
I'll just finish off just to talk about what worked for us. So what mainly worked for us, is this the one more? Yeah, so what worked for us is that with the rehabs, if you're working in a non-Aboriginal rehab, a lot of the leave, there's stricter limits on leave. With Aboriginal clients, I believe and end up talking with the workers that, we need to be with family and we need to be in community. So our leave, we didn't hold it off. Like within their first 2 weeks, we were letting people go home on leave, whereas with other services, they wouldn't let them go home until 2 months. But with that, with the leave, we'd let them know that they'd get urine screened and breathalyzed once they come back. So, and we were the clients were pretty good with that. We also look at the speakers that we were getting in, because we were getting Aboriginal speakers in. Clients were able to relate to those. Having more Aboriginal staff there, clients felt more at ease because they had someone there who had understanding of where they come from and had an understanding of their background as well. We were also less rigid on clients who bust. But when we say less rigid, it doesn't mean that they just deliberately go out and drink or deliberately go out and do drugs. If they sit down and speak to one of the counsellors or the manager on the reasons why they busted, and if we think that, there was a legitimate reason why, because sometimes people have just lost a loved one, and we'd talk that through with them. So, we weren't so strict on that. Then also, with the work that we'd already put in with other clients that are already in there, the other clients in there encouraging, especially the older clients encouraging the younger clients, and trying to keep the younger clients on track so that their lives don't get out of control, because the older ones know from experience of, if you don't get help now, your life can go way off track. And there's simple things that can work, like even the paint. The paint we had in the original rehab was blue. All the clients that were coming through were saying, why have you got a blue, why is it all blue inside the rehab? And the people who chose the blue before chose blue because blue is supposed to be calming. But for the clients, a lot of our clients came from the prisons, and the walls in the prison are blue. So our rehab reminded them of prison. So even just simple little things like changing the colour of the paint in the rehab to a different colour can have a different effect on clients as well. So I think that's pretty much all we've got today. So.